My name is Nora Abousteit. I'm here with my colleague Paivi Kankaro.
Hi.
She also has a microphone. And we'd like to talk to you about reaching and engaging a young audience. I've been doing this for many, many years. Probably 10, 12 years I've been in the digital craft arena. And I said earlier, I was talking to a few people, there's always a very diverse audience at CHA. There's the big retailers, there's the smaller retailers, there's the independent designers, there's the manufacturers. So there's, I'm trying to cater to all of you more or less, but we'll leave some time at the end so we can dig deeper, or even in between, if you have certain questions, just raise your hands and ask the questions. I want to make sure that you really get out of this what you're hoping to get out of it. And there's for sure a lot of things we can talk about. This is some of it, and so whatever you want to get to know more, or wherever you want to dig deeper, just say it. So there's an outline. We'll introduce ourselves and say a bit about the work, what we do. We'll do that, rather quickly, but it is relevant for what we're talking about here. I'll talk a bit about general consumption behavior, how that's shifting, general internet trends, because that affects everyone that is consuming and crafting, craft industry trends, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing when I talk to people, when I talk to our clients, big retailers, etc. Some craft trends, specific craft trends. We've seen a lot in the keynote already, so I kept that rather short. But we can also talk more about that if that's something you're interested in. And then, of course, how engagement with that young audience, how that works, and what you can do as a business. And hopefully, you can learn some from our experience. So who we are. I started in the digital craft business with this little company I launched about 10 years ago called Abousteit. It's a sewing community. I brought an old print magazine online for a German publishing house. That's when I came to the US as well. And there was a print magazine with an average age of 66 years old. That was the Burda Mode Magazin. Some of you might be familiar, who are familiar with the sewing world. It was very big in Europe and Eastern Europe, Middle East, and so the publishing house wanted to launch it to a younger, new audience. And as an extremely passionate sewer and crafter, and with lots of love to technology, I pitched for that. So, and they had some kind of crazy trust in me and gave me a budget to do that. So anyway, fast forward, we launched what we called an open source sewing community. I ran that business, which at first I thought it was a project, but I ran that business for about 5 years, grew it to 1 million members, and the average age was 29. So we went from the 66 that brand experienced to 29 years old. While I was doing Abousteit, I already had joined, I went to a lot of fairs, and I was very early. I was sharing my office with Etsy in 2006 when there were 10 people, right? Bree Pattis, who then went off to do MakerBot. He was still with Make Magazine. I don't know if that all means something to you, but MakerBot 3D printing, one of the largest successes, sold for several $100 million a few years later. So there was something happening, I felt, and I joined the board of the Craft and Hobby Association as well, and I saw that the industry was, I saw all these young people making and wanting to do things, but I saw that the industry wasn't really catching up with it. And so I felt that there need to be some kind of a platform for young people figuring out crafting and learning how to make things, and where also the industry could learn from it and engage with this audience. And that's when I launched Collabora, which is in a way a Facebook for crafters and makers. And maybe Paivi, who's working with me, can say a few things about what we're doing there.
Sure.
We're trying to hold this talk together. Let's see how that works.
Hi,
so,
everybody.
Paivi, what are we doing at Collabora?
What do we do? Well,
We'll do this rather quick, but we think it's important to tell you because it is part of what we think is important to engage the younger audience. So. Do you want to go here? You can see
I
the
come
presenter
there.
notes. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I'm Paivi. I'm the project manager for Collabora, and I'm also head of the content and social media distribution. And I do video production, so I have my hands around everywhere. Also, I work with our talented network of, we have a collaborator network. There are talented bloggers and crafters, so I work closely with them. This is Collabora. I don't know if anyone's ever visited Collabora before. Okay, well, go have a look. Maybe what you see here, that's what the crafters see who come in. What we do, like behind the scenes, we do a lot more. But this is what you see when you go to collabora.com. So we're a community for makers. A lot of people come here to find inspiration on, what should be my next project. Even people who don't have any experience before, they might come in and see all these cool DIY fashion projects. And here's some of the examples. We have sewing is really big, knitting is big, we have home decor, jewelry making, we're wearing our own jewelries here. We did a wire wrapping ring event. So you go in, you find all these cool projects, you get inspired, you can post your own. And here you can see there's a project, somebody made this nice skirt over here, and this girl got inspired and made her own version of it. So you get to see what other crafters are doing, maybe with the same patterns or trends that you're interested in. We also have direct links to suppliers. If there's a project and there's a pattern you want to use, you get a link to that, or you get a link to the supplies that you need to make that specific project. So it's like one place to find all of this. We're not selling anything. Only thing we sell on the site is patterns, because we want to support independent pattern makers and small brands, so those are available. But we are not like a web store because there's other brands or other companies who do that very well. But we work with the big brands though. Like there's Lion Brand, we've done campaigns with Bernina, but also I see 2-in-1s here, it's an indie label. So we want to give them the exposure too, because they're the one who has their hands on the trends and know what's hip and cool and trendy. But we also want to educate, so we have a large skills section where you can go find like beginner knitting stitches or basic of sewing or crocheting. Amigurumi was the latest. Actually, one of the most popular what we have is how to make swimwear or how to make underwear. Those are very popular right now.
So is this a website or an app?
It's a website,
Yeah.
and it's mobile optimized.
Yeah, it's a website. But behind the scenes, what we do is, curating the community. We also do projects for big companies. We do photography, we do video content. We have a lot of tutorials that we do. And we do events. We call them craft jams. We started in New York, and actually really fun. People seem to want to get offline. They want to get out of their screens, meet people, get their hands on supplies, learn a new skill, have fun at the same time, and come up with an actual product that you can make in 2 hours. And you can make a lot in 2 hours.
Yeah, like these rings.
Yes.
All right, so I'll talk a bit about the shift in consumption behavior that's happening, because there's such a big opportunity for crafting and making in these days, because people, every few decades we see a shift in that consumption behavior. We had mass production in the mid of the last century, and that shifted towards more of an experience economy, right? People want to go somewhere and they want to not just buy something, they want to have an experience. Why are we all running Starbucks, 50-cent coffee? We pay $5 for it. It's every time I do this, I think it's ridiculous, but it's the experience that we want to have, right? And so that's been pushing a bit further, or going a bit further, where people want to know where things come from. The originality, the origin of things are very important. We've seen it in the organic food movement, right? Where people suddenly wanted to know where do my beans come from? Where's this banana grown, right? I want something local, sustainable, farm to table, big words. And so the farmers market in the US, they've multiplied. I think they were a few thousand, and now there's like, or like a few hundred, and now there's something like 4,000 or 5,000 farmers markets in the U.S. So and this already shows us what's happening, what is happening in our field as well, right? People want something that's authentic, they want something that's original, they want to have a story behind it, and so more and more people don't want to just know what they put into their bodies, they also want to know what they put onto their bodies, or what kind of materials they're using. Everybody's sitting in front of screens, they want some kind of tactility, and so there's this shift from conspicuous consumption that we've seen in the 80s and maybe still in the 90s, where people would buy something to show off, like I have this Gucci, Prada, I don't know what. And so we see this shift, and at Collabora we call it to conspicuous production. And so it's not just amongst crafters and people who are already making things, there's a whole population, there's a whole consumption, change in consumption, and that's huge, and that's such a big opportunity for all of us, right? But we see it seeping into fashion already. Handmade, we see Benetton, we see Bergdorf Goodman, Chanel, everybody is already associating with craft and handmade. So we've seen slow fashion, right? Slow food, slow fashion. And so once that happens, more and more people don't want to just be buying slow fashion, they want to participate in. Just like when you see all the cooking shows that are happening. You know, I think in 5 years, what we see right now in cooking, I think cooking will be, or let's say crafting will be the new cooking, and we will see a lot more on TV, etc. And what's helping for that is, of course, general internet trends. And I have a few slides just to remind us of the enormity of what's going on online. I have a few slides in general about internet usage, right? So right now, we have 3 billion people online, right? 3 billion people are online. Mobile is rising tremendously. We're having, when you look at this chart, the green is mobile, the blue is desktop, and you see from 2008, the way it increased the mobile usage, the green, it's now 50% of the general usage of internet. So if you are not present on mobile, if your site is not mobile optimized, you really have a problem, especially with the younger generation. And I've seen that. I mean, I go on a lot of craft sites, a lot of retailers, a lot of manufacturers specifically. You cannot have a good experience on mobile. TV viewing, surprisingly, is the same. I mean, we've added mobile and desktop to our viewing habits. Red is the TV viewing. So it's still important. So people are doing, actually, they're spending more screen time. So instead of just shifting, and I think this is always a surprise. Like I saw this slide several months ago, and I was really surprised. I thought TV is down, but it actually isn't. So whatever you're doing, TV is still important. And I see a lot of internet companies going to TV. BuzzFeed, for example, which is the internet company, probably the most famous, most successful, they just took a huge investment from NBC and are doing a lot more TV things. So it's really interesting how that trend is starting to happen, the TV trend. User-generated content is on the rise. So this is becoming something that's an absolute normality. Users are creating content. It's not something that, it's the second nature of people. That's what they do. It's like brushing teeth, right? Video views, especially on Facebook. Facebook has now 4 billion video views per day. So if you're doing video and you're dabbling a bit on YouTube, I mean, you have to get on Facebook with your video. So interesting also, we're talking about the young audience. It's about Snapchat and It's about Snapchat and Instagram, but Pinterest not so much. And I'm going to go a bit into detail. So when you look at the right side of this slide, you see which are the most important social networks on the rise for teens, for example. So the green one tells you what's going on in 2015, and the yellow one went on in 2013. So yellow, red, blue-green is how, how it changed in time. So you see Instagram used to be below 20 and it's now above 32%. Facebook is going the exact opposite direction, right? Facebook is at 14% and now, it used to be over 30% and now it's at 14%. So it really is important to see the trend. Yes, Facebook is big and Facebook is important for many age groups, but it's just not for the young age group. It's just not important, right? And so Snapchat, which didn't exist many years ago, so we don't have that comparison, but that is definitely on the rise. And so even though it sounds, Snapchat is difficult to understand. I had a friend really guiding me through it just to understand how to do my snaps, but you have to get into it, right? And what's interesting too about Facebook is that right now, Facebook, if you have a company and you don't pay Facebook, you only get 6% visibilities of your posts. 6%. That's like single digit. And Instagram is 100%. Because there's not this filtering, and Instagram, until now, does not have a filter that takes your post, makes your post less important to others, and then forces you to pay money to the company, right? So, and it's the same with Snapchat too. It's, if people see your Snapchat, same with Instagram, it's 100%. Urban population is growing too, but household size is collapsing, basically. So there's more and more small households. And surprise, surprise, not. But e-commerce is just it's here to stay, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You have a few big ones like Amazon. It's going to be hard to beat them because they don't really have to make money, right? And so when you figure out your strategy for e-commerce, for example, what you have to do is either you have exclusivity, so nobody else sells that product, or you have the best price. And there it's really hard to beat Amazon on that. So e-commerce is getting harder and harder and harder, and especially in the craft industry, because the margins are relatively low, right? So I'll be talking a bit about industry trends. So what I hear, we have a lot of big clients, retailers, craft brands that you all know. And we communicate a lot with independent designers. We have our members. So there's a few things that everybody is talking about and that's kind of buzzing. And so one of them is video and free video. So I found it really interesting. There's a few companies that's offering video for purchase. Some of them changing them as Craftsy, you pay like $19, $20. Creative Bug now changed their model to a Netflix with $5 a month. But there's more and more free video coming into the space. So this is an example of Mood, right? The fabric store, which became famous with Project Runway. I go to Mood frequently because I like to sew and I like their fabrics, and I'm friends with the owners. And then one day, last year, Eric said, hey, want to see our sewing studio? And I'm like, sure. I've never seen anything like this. It's a room as big as this one. There's at least 70 or 80 sewing stations. There's 2 big screens like this one. So there's a stage for a teacher with a microphone, almost like motivational talk, that teaches, at that point for free, all these people how to sew, right? Now they're charging like a basic beginner package, whatever, because need to make a bit of money. But you can, at Mood, you can take a sewing course for maybe, I think $90 or something. There's a question.
Just on this, can you spell that? Only because, obviously, from the accent, I'm just trying to figure out if we've got the same company, but we just pronounce it differently.
Yeah, sure. The German accent. It's Mood. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So it's MOOD, like mood, happy mood, bad mood, Mood Fabrics. Mood Fabrics became famous through Project Runway, and they've now heavily invested into consumer. Mood Fabrics used to be on the 2nd floor in New York, just catering to fashion houses and fashion students. And they just opened on the 1st floor. They have this sewing space. And why I'm putting them on the video space is because they just launched their Mood University, and something like 200 free videos about sewing. I mean, that's enormous, right? And we see that more and more amongst a lot of the manufacturer or product offers, that they are either creating video. Some of them are asking us to create video, right? So we do a lot of this because it's hard to do this all in-house. And so we see video is all the rave, right? There's a lot of need to customize this video too. So it gets complicated because people are at so many different platforms, so need all these different formats. So it's a lot of work, it's more budget, it's hard, you know, but you have to be everywhere and you have to be in the format, you have to have your content in the format that people are used to consuming it. You have to speak their language. It's not just about English and the instruction. Their language is the platform they're using. Another word we're hearing a lot is the multi-crafter or the general DIYer. And there's a huge shift that happened over the past 10 years. And I've seen it happening when I was at Bertastyle, where it started out that, you know, somebody was a sewer, somebody was a knitter. And they definitely, if they were a knitter, they definitely were not a crocheter. And I mean, some of you might remember there was almost like some kind of animosity between the two. No idea why, but hey. So what's happening now is that, and partly through the internet, and we saw the statistics, right? YouTube is, I think, has like a 10-year anniversary or something. There's a lot more access to resources, free resources, and you get a lot more inspiration, you see a lot more things. And so people are starting new hobbies. It used to be linear. The mother taught the daughter, the teacher taught the students, right? But now you see it everywhere, you get inspired. And so this, for example, this multi-crafter, she's a Collabora member. This is actually from her Ravelry account. This is from her Collabora account. And so she calls herself in her profile a knitter learning to sew. And then on her Ravelry account, she wrote, 2015, the year of cheating on knitting was sewing. I'm slowing down the knitting to work on other parts of my wardrobe. So you can see actually a time shift, how she shifted from knitting to sewing. And she's probably going to shift back one day, maybe back and forth. But this is just an example, and we see that amongst many. Like when we look at our data and we see what people used to upload and now what kind of other projects they upload, there's a huge cross shift going on. Kits, big buzzword in the past few years. What I found out through our own experience, but also talking to retailers and to manufacturers, kits actually don't work, as in K-I-T-S, right? And so some ready-made kits for kids might work, but generally for a crafter, it did not pay out for the companies. Part of the reason is that, you know, you want to choose your own color, you want to choose your own materials to a certain extent. If you have certain supplies, you don't want to rebuy these supplies. You don't want to have so many brushes of the same size, same with knitting needles, etc. So there was a lot of hype around it. Now it's going over to bundling now. So a lot of the websites, what they do is, who sell crafts already, they just put the different kinds, suggestions next to each other, and then it comes in a box and it is like a kit, but it's not your pre-packaged kit. And that's happening at the retailers too. So over the past 1 or 2 years, we see that at Michael's, we see that at Joann's. They're trying to bundle items that make a project. So it's not just the paint is at the paint aisle, the yarn is at the yarn aisle. If there's some kind of project that you can make, they try to bundle it within the store. And when we talk to these companies, they, you know, that's what they tell us. They're trying to do more and more bundling. Of course, logistically, it's a big task. Community is a big buzzword. Everybody is trying to figure out, how can I build community? And I think it's really important. Yes?
What you're saying realistically is previously what we had, I guess, our generation. Monkey see, monkey do. They wanted to copy, you actually did a demonstration, they wanted to
Yeah.
to replicate.
Yeah.
The younger generation are going, okay, well, is that inspiration that I can do better? Is that
I don't know if it's about better, but it's definitely, I want to do what I want to do. I have my own ideas. I don't care about the rules. I just, there's something I like and I want to try to figure it out, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And I will talk about a bit later about this as well. So it used to be, there was this top-down approach. You know, like your typical, let's say the Martha Stewart approach. There was this expert that was almost higher, that was almost saint-like, right? And so there was a certain way you did something, you know, it was written in the books, it was an instruction, and then you did that, and it looked exactly the same, and that's over. I mean, people still want to learn and so on, but generally speaking, people rather have something that's not so perfect, but it's completely their own. So community building, a lot of companies, when I talk to all the retailers, we need community, we need content and loyalty. How can we get community? So they come to us and they ask us, how do you create, yes, please.
You see all three of those, I can't keep up with the rest.
Yes, community, content, and loyalty. So people coming back over and over again. And the community building, and I'll talk about this later and I have a slide how to do that actually, right? But a lot of the big companies, they're like, or brands, oh, we have this brand and we want to build community around it. It's not that simple, because people are not in a community because they adore your brand necessarily, right? Like there's other reasons. There's certain content that they like, or there's a certain spirit, or there's certain values that they live by. So it is something, there's more and more of these micro communities, and I will talk about this later as well, where the companies have to figure out, can we create this, or do we join it somewhere else? And I'm telling you now, I'm already telling you, mostly it's better to somehow join it somewhere else. It's very hard to build your own community. It takes a lot of money, a lot of investment. And people are diverse, you know, they don't want to just stick to one brand or one company. So innovation, it's a big topic. And it's something that I had a lot of conversations on the show floor with people, with buyers, with, you know, stores, and people are missing really, truly new products. And it's hard because we all know what happened in the 90s and the 2000s when the craft industry consolidated. There were many different smaller stores, and then they became all the big chain stores. They had this great purchasing power where they could really pressure manufacturers on the margins, right? And so if you have these small margins, how are you going to innovate on your product? And now everybody is screaming, we need more innovation. There's a customer that can't necessarily pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars of new things, but new technology specifically usually costs money. And also a lot of the big retailers, they're worried about an inventory risk. So they don't dare that much to put in new things necessarily. A lot of people are playing it safe, right? So innovation is something that everybody talks about, but there is not really yet the conclusion how can that innovation happen. I have a few ideas about this. Private labels is a big thing. We've seen a lot of private labels coming up in the past few years. So that's, of course, for the traditional manufacturers, they have to think about, you know, what they do, because the retailers are now going and they're sourcing their own. This is just one example of a private label. So basically what private label means is that a retailer, instead of buying from a manufacturer, like Coats or I Love to Create or Plaid, they create their own brand in-house and source the materials themselves. And that, of course, again, makes it more difficult for the manufacturers to do something innovative. Another trend in the industry, or what I hear people talking about is, are we makers, are we crafters? Is it the maker movement? So there's a lot of buzz around that, and everybody was really excited for the maker to come and the maker to enter the space. And I just see, every time I ask somebody, how do you define it? There's always a different definition, and that's okay. I'm just saying there is not a clear, it's not really clear what, it's not, I mean, maker and crafter doesn't mean the same to everyone. So whenever you use these terms, you have to understand, for some people it's cool, for others isn't. And it's almost, for some it's interchangeable, for some it only refers to electronics, for others it refers to the young maker. Then there's this idea of, like, there's the maker movement. Some people who are young in craft, they don't think they're part of it, others think they are. So there's blurry lines in that. And the rise of the independent designers, we see that happening stronger and stronger. I mean, there's, over the past few years, the amount of new designers coming into the craft space is just tremendous. And we see it very strongly in sewing and knitting, because it's now so easy to upload a PDF and to sell it, right? But in general, everything's getting more fragmented, and it's not this one person anymore. I always say there's like thousands of Martha Stewarts now. I think this is great, because this is actually the chance for innovation, because the talent and the innovation is actually in people, right? I want to talk to you about craft trends in general. And so what we do is we dig into data for this, right? There's some really nice tools online that actually show us what people are up to. And so we've done some trend digging. And this is, for example, the trend for knitting. I focused on YouTube just because this is where people go to learn. And it's a very good indicator, actually. So we see that knitting, I mean, obviously it's seasonal, but it's actually not really rising that strong if we compare it to fiber and textile in general. So we hear a lot about how knitting is in decline, and when we look at the data, we can actually, we can confirm that. So the blue dotted is knitting, and then the black is always the category in general. And then you can compare those two, and you see how it's trending compared to general fiber crafts. Whereas sewing paints a completely different picture. And we've seen that, I've seen that at Bertha, I've seen that in collaborating with a lot of data on both of these sides. And we see it, we see it in the general, we see it generally online, and comparing it to to fiber in general, we see that sewing is steadily on the rise. So knitting, not so much anymore. I mean, it's still big, don't get me wrong, but there's general industry trends, and that's what I want to, talk about here. Crocheting, though, we can see that if you follow, I mean, it's also seasonal, but it's going up. You can see this, right? In general, it's like the trend is going up, and you can see it's definitely going up compared to the general fiber textile category. Very interesting. One of my favorites, amigurumi, we've seen it explode, and this is really what's happening. I mean, people are really into it, and it's still going up. Comparing it to the general data, we still see that it's not always, but it's getting already above it. It's already beating it. So it's and then unfortunately, scrapbooking does not look so good, and we felt it in the industry, but that's something that doesn't look even worse when it comes to the general craft trend. So there's a big gap. So scrapbooking is the blue on the bottom, and the general craft is the black one. Some of the things which I always thought is huge, weaving. I think weaving might be more aspirational than actually trendy when you look at the data. But also embroidery, another personal favorite, that is really going up. So that's not just imagination, or it's not just where the weaving, I think a lot of times it's a very Pinterest, beautiful thing, but maybe then sometimes people don't take the action to do it. So often you see certain images and you see certain trends, but when you dig deep and you actually look down if people are doing it, maybe they like to share it because it looks pretty, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're making it. A similar one is the cement, concrete, these concrete, like we all saw it and it was like, oh, this is so cool, everybody's doing this. Nobody's doing it. Okay, so when you see that, you make sure you verify. So here's the embroidery compared to general craft, and you see really it's on the rise, and it's very, very high. I'm going to talk about a few specific craft trends. Trends is like the new trend word, I feel, right? I mean, you have we have the trend keynote, and then I walk around the booth, I see I see plaid, plaid has all these things. This is trendy, and then I think from CHA also there was a board like, oh, these are the trends, so trends are the new trends for sure, and we're joining that too, or we've always joined it. But yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of your audience? Maybe it's, are 20% sewers and 30% knitters?
Yeah, I mean, our audience specifically, the majority are sewers and knitters and crocheters. The thing is, when we launch, we do have a lot of home decoration too. We also have paper craft. But when we launch, we put a focus on DIY fashion, accessories, and home decoration. That was the focus of the site. We do monitor other data as well, and we look at trends and indicators. But that was the focus, and that's also because we saw that on the rise. Like, when I launched Berta Style 10 years ago, sewing was just starting to start, but I just saw it rising, and you see a lot of this is what we see happening, and it's also something that I know how to do well. So craft-specific trends. We have a special algorithm at Collabra for user karma and for project radioactivity. So we have a proprietary algorithm where we take different kinds of data points. There are many, many data points. It's about likes, it's about sharing, it's about views, it's about people making it, and that way we see we think truly is trending, specifically for the categories that we're doing. So I'm sharing a few things with you. We see a lot more intimates. Underwear is just becoming very popular. Activewear, just like in fashion, in normal fashion. How would you call it in retail fashion? Bold patterns, embroidery for sure, hand stitching. We see, and I don't know if this is appropriate here, but I just wanted to make the point, we see a lot of subversiveness. And, Joanne's actually just got stitching patterns, I think WTF, and they didn't say what's the food, but, it's something and we've seen this for a few years now. And then the insides, the hidden insides, people love like a crazy lining or like some kind of detail that you actually that the outside doesn't see. We see a lot of embellishment, old clothes just being made nice with some kind of trimming, etc. People crocheting skirts and knitting skirts so that where knitting almost looks like things you would sew normally. And popular culture. People are always interpreting what's going on in popular culture. Macrame is still pretty big, and dyeing, murals, and the faux animal trophies, which you've probably also seen a bunch. So engagement. Who should we engage with and why, right? So millennials, big buzzword. Why is it a big buzzword? Because you have 80 million people, 80 million. This says 79, but I think we're going to be at 80 million soon. And they have $170 billion to spare, right? The interesting thing about millennials, and this is why it's such a huge opportunity for the craft industry, is that they came of age during the recession, right? And so this dramatically impacted their careers, their life choices, and their spending habits. So they had less career opportunities, lower salaries, and so they were doing a lot of things DIY, makeshift. And so this whole kind of Etsy economy of makers and sellers, that generation grew up with it, and that's a huge opportunity. They do spend money on things. There was a survey of 1,600 DIYers in that age, where I think Cricut put that survey out, where DIYers under 35 years were spending more than $1,000 a year on projects. That's a lot of money. That's almost $100 every month. and the over 35-year-old crowd only spends half of that. I mean, maybe they have family, maybe they have other expenses, but that young generation has money to spend, right? So let's take opportunity of that. And nearly half of the participants believe that technology is the future of DIY. So there we have a bit of a challenge. I mean, 3D printing isn't where it would be nice to have it yet. It's still not as pervasive. I think it will get there in a few years, but you know. So this is the solution, I think. It's called co-creation or collaboration, right? And it's really, really interesting because when you look at the service, 4 in 10, 4 in 1, that doesn't really work, right? 4 in 10 millennials want brands to allow them to influence their products. Yes?
There, does that refer to the millennials or?
To the brand's products. So the millennials want to influence the brand's product. They want to have a say. And as soon as you have a say, and when you participate in the making process, you create ownership. And that creates loyalty. That creates community. So there's a big, big, big opportunity in letting others help you create your products, modify your products. And not just afterwards. Not like this is the product and you can make blue, green, yellow. No, let them be part of the production process, right? I've done a lot in that concern from very early on. With Bertha, we called it open source sewing. We actually had removed all the copyrights from the patterns so people could sew and sell. The first book we published was a community project. This is Random House, Potter Craft book. It was one of the best-selling craft books when it was published. And what we did is we asked our community to actually create the patterns for the book. And we featured them. And that was, way before. I mean, that was like years and years back. And we still do the same at Collabora. This was, yes? It always depends. You can't say it in general. I mean, the thing is like, people want to have a value. So what's the value that you're giving them? If you publish a book, and I mean, making books doesn't pay that well. I mean, in the end, you're lucky if you get your production costs out, right? But if you do a book and you feature somebody, this person is a published author, right? So that's of high value. And then you don't need to pay them. I mean, we do a lot of collaborations where we do pay people, especially when we work with clients, because we make money, and so we only find it fair if other people who do work also earns money. But it has to make sense. It has to make sense for the business. So I wouldn't focus on money. I would always focus on what value can you give somebody, and is that a value for that person? And that could be many things. It could be access to something. Often it's a feature to something. Sometimes it's an introduction to somebody. It's all relative. You just have to figure out when you talk to them, just ask them like, what's important to you? What do you need to get out of this? Yes?
So was that sewing handbook sold?
Yeah, that was sold in all stores. I mean, if you go to stores, in bookstores, you usually find it. But producing a book it's very costly. Like, we didn't really make money on it. I don't know now anymore because I don't work at the company anymore, but I don't know what's going on now. So we So we also do that at Collabora on a regular basis where we work. I mean, this was a cooperation with a quilt company where they wanted to see products that are not quilts. So we've done a little co-creation project there. And generally about engagement beyond co-creation, right? What's important? How do you get millennials? How do you get the young generation? Hey, answering their questions, comments in real time via social media. It's a lot of work, but that's what they're used to. Like, people just, people communicate with text, with Twitter, with Line, with WhatsApp, with Snapchat. It's all real time. So if that's the communication modus, if that's the communication method, if you don't do it, you don't speak their language, right? Sponsoring entertaining events, creating online content such as videos, photos, games, and blogs. So they want to be included in all of this. So it's really about participating and being included. And surprise, celebrity culture doesn't appeal quite as much. Only 19% want brands to partner with a celebrity or public figure they admire. That was vastly different several years ago. So right now, what actually happens is that people become their own celebrities, right? So they don't just, we saw the user-generated content online is going up. We see all this rise of independent designers, bloggers, etc. So people realize that they can become their own star. So why should they admire that star if they can be the next star, right? And we see that what's happening on YouTube, etc. Affirmation is really important, and that's why community is so important, right? Millennials seek peer affirmation. 70% of millennials are more excited about a decision they've made when their friends agree with them. How do they agree with them? They give them a like, they retweet, reblock, whatever. 68% of millennials usually don't make a major decision until they have a discussion, until they have discussed it with a few people they trust. And that changed also. Those things changed over the few years because now everybody's constantly connected. Everybody's connected 24/7. Back in the days when there was hardly any internet, no real-time internet, right? Like, I mean, we had internet in the 90s, but it wasn't real-time. And you all know the differentiation between real-time. It's something you see it right away, right? Like Twitter, for example, is one of the early real-time internet platforms. So you didn't have that. So you were actually, you know, when you left school or when you left work, you would be at home, and you had to figure out things by yourself. But now, constantly you can get feedback, and that's a normal thing. A lot of teenagers, they have to like every post of their friends. Like, I'm always surprised when I see my friends' teenage kids, and then they have like 150 likes on every post. I'm like, wow, they're so popular. No, because all their friends have to like every single one of their posts. It's quite a bit of work. But what does it mean for you? If you speak their language, if you want to speak their language, this is their language. It's you know, language is not just about words. It's about cues. It's about signals. It's a different culture almost. Like, you know, how do I shake hands? How do I kiss hello? One kiss, two kiss, no kiss, right? Liking somebody's post, it's a cultural thing that you have to be familiar of, and how often do you do it? And then another thing, how you engage people is really doing something good, cross-marketing. But it has to be real, it has to be authentic, right? So they believe in cross-marketing. They are more likely than non-millennials to develop a more positive image of a company as a result of cross-marketing programs. Millennials attempt to buy products from companies who support the causes they care about, and they cooperate. And well, they support corporate programs that make cost involvement easier. There's a word missing. Apologies about that. So, and we see that the rise was Tom's. Remember the shoes where you buy one pair of shoes and the other pair of shoes give Warby Parker, the same with the glasses. You know, or where a lot of companies say we give 1%. So this is something, you know, they want to do something good. So what now? What does it mean? What does it mean for us, right? So we have a lot of to-dos. Start working. It takes time. You can't do it one day to the other. You can't say, okay, I want to, you know, I need to reach the millennials. We're going to be on Instagram, Snapchat, and 3 months from now, that's it. You know, we're there. Takes time. Takes listening. You need to understand. Design aesthetics are really important. There's just a very different sensibility of what's cool and what's not cool. And it's very hard to understand it unless you really work with somebody who comes from that generation. You have to dare. We talked a lot about innovation and that a lot of companies are not willing to dare to bring in technology and so on. And I think we just have to be more, we have to just be less risk averse and just try things. In tech and startups, they always say, fail fast, fail often, and fail fast. Just try things. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Be you, be authentic, There's nothing wrong with being older, but just be open, just be listening, be open, be authentic. Don't make up a story. Don't say like, oh, I'm the maker. If you don't feel it, don't do it, But listen to others. Just be honest, be real. And then there's go where they are. Don't expect them to come to you. And that's the thing where I see a lot of companies, we're building this community site on our brand, on our page, on our website. We're doing this. It's, you have to get out there. You have to and it's very fragmented. It will take time, but this is just what you have to do. The top-down broadcasting just doesn't work anymore. There's many micro communities. You have to be in a dialogue, and this is how you then will build your community. If you have your honest story, people can relate to it. You do something good, and you come to them. You're visiting, right? And then they will visit you back. So don't expect them, don't push them, just go, and then hopefully they will come back. Let others shine and make stars out of others. Again, it's not about this one celebrity culture anymore. Like, see who's talented, who can you support, how can you give people a platform to succeed. At Collabora, we always say we want to give a platform for others to succeed. We give tools, we give access to tools and resources, and then we elevate. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's about everybody else. Meet in real life. I think this is really important. Events, experiences. There's so much noise online. People, how can they know that, you are nice, you're trustworthy, there's just so much competition online right now because it's cheap and for free. So make sure that you can meet in real life. Maybe make an event, go to events. I think this has become much more important than ever. And it's interesting. I mean, people are willing to pay money for events, right? Like when you look at concert tickets, like many people thought that was the rise of the record. Then, was the rise of the CD, was the rise of iTunes, whatever. Everybody thought, concerts are over. Great business. Great business. And always the most important there is to collaborate. And, just to summarize it in one word, it's about listening, it's about doing things together, it's about, raising the tide together, as they say. We are what we make, that's our tagline. We have some buttons here if you like. If you have some questions, you're welcome to come to our booth. We're at 1789. But we have now a few minutes too, so if there's certain things that I didn't address or certain things that you want to dig deeper, please tell me. I'm here to give you the best experience. Yes, and you had a question.
What exactly does your company provide to a small shop?
We have brand pages that small shops. We have small shops that set up brand pages, and then they. Yeah, a real small shop. I mean, basically, you do it. It's like a Facebook brand page. So it's like like you're going on Facebook. You're uploading your name. That's one thing for real small shops, and we have real small shops who do that. Any other question? Yes.
You're talking about communities, and I'm wondering, in DIY, do you think, can you give me some sort of balance between them doing it by themselves? Are they enjoying seeing a project and then coming home and doing it, like in their life-work balance, doing a craft or sewing, versus getting together? Like, for us, it was the old cropper hopper crops when we would go and do it as a group.
Yeah. So more and more people are inclined to do this in a group. And we see a lot of stores, lounges, craft lounges, sewing lounges. Actually, we launched an event business last year because we saw that many people wanted to come together. We call them craft jams. So right now they're only in New York, but we're hoping to expand. And so that's the whole idea also in real life. People want to get together in real life. They want to take a break from the screen, from digital. They want to connect. And for a lot of people, they don't necessarily dig through and read instructions. You know, either they watch a video or they just want other people to tell them. So absolutely, events are very important, very important. Yes?
Do you know where we can find some data on other trends like this, spiritual journaling and stamping, where you had all that great data on?
Yeah, if you email us, I'll send you the link to that. Okay. Yeah, you have to do it yourself. You have to dig through it a bit, but you can find that there too. It's a Google Trends. I mean, if you also search for Google Trends and you dig through it, but I'm happy to email it to you. Yeah, no problem. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the channels?
Oh, and please fill out the form for feedback. Be honest. I want to learn what I can do better, you know, but also be nice. So they invite me again. Yes, sorry.
Can you talk a little bit about the things like Periscope versus YouTube?
Yeah.
I've talked to some younger people.
Yeah.
They have told me they're not at all interested in Periscope. It's yet another thing. They already have their channels, so they don't want to participate.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like, obviously there's like, when you talk to one or two, it doesn't necessarily represent, but we see it on the rise, especially since YouTube is not really a mobile platform. And the screen now is vertical. So you see that at companies like Snapchat. YouTube is the old horizontal. And so there's a lot of companies that are springing up Periscope. So they will be more, I mean, YouTube is still immensely important, but we already see that there's something that's taking over, which is a more mobile native platforms. Yeah, but YouTube is still hugely important, yeah. There anyone else? Something I didn't cover, I should have covered. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Well, okay, so you have my contact info here. If you have any questions, please, tell